कृपया ध्यान दीजिए, the language used on the podcast may not be fit for consumption. We warn you, tread carefully. But listen, yaar, don't be so conservative. Yes, there's one of the pillars in my building, somewhere in Malabar Hill where the poor live, which is rusted and crumbled a little bit. I'm using that as an analogy because the person coming on is one of the pillars of television who's not rusted at all but become bigger, stronger. And actually, when the history of television is written, this man's name will be there right at the top. Very amazing journey. I've studied his journey from the time when he literally started at the bottom. He's going to tell us all that. And to where he became a mover and shaker and a designer of television and now OTT, whatever you want to call the medium. All that and more. His name is Nair, Sameer Nair. I thought I'd give you a James Bond-like entry, Sameer, because you always like that glamour thing. We don't have music. We don't have hot females in the background. Nothing like that. But what we do have is a tribute to your greatness. So anything great about you can be discussed today. Feel free to lie also at any point. Yeah. Let's begin with how much you earn at applause and how much you donate to charity. No, I'm kidding. So, Sameer, great to have you. Right now, you're running applause, but it's been a huge journey. Have you ever actually looked back on a medium like this and spoken to anyone about your life? Because, would you even remember how many things you've done, in a sense?
I don't know. What happens is that when you look back at life, much like how when you look at sport, you always see the final scores, right? So you say so-and-so won this match with these scores, 6-3, 6-2, 7-6, 6-7, whatever. And that's how, sort of history gets recorded. But the real life being led is all the points, all the points, all the little wins, all the little losses, the breaks in between, the rest.
I'm still intrigued at the tennis reference. I thought you'd go cricket, but you decided to show your elitism immediately and go with tennis. Okay.
No, I like both. I don't mind tennis or cricket. I can give you a whole range of metaphors on cricket. I use both actually.
Good. We'll get.
So for life. Sorry, you go.
No. I wanted to just start at the beginning because we were jumping ahead. I wanted to start right at the beginning. I'm trying to remember my first memory of you. You literally worked in production, right? Right back in maybe the late 80s, early 90s. Let's not date it, but long ago because we're not that old.
Right.
Yeah. So,
nor are you.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, come on. And, I have the hair to show it. Not much, but whatever's left. Sameer, let's just go back to how did you land up in this business to begin with? What was the idea for a young Sameer Nair? I mean, look, if you can remember your teenage years, what do you want to do? How did you land up here? Because I know it was initially a huge struggle. So let's hear the beginning of the story.
So I'll tell you, when I was growing up, I was actually really short as a child. So I was the shortest in the class. And I stayed that height for the longest time of my life. So I think almost till class 12, I had barely got to like 5 feet 1 or 2.
But you're 6 foot
so
plus.
That obviously then, so obviously you can understand that it would have had a lot of psychological damage in my life growing up.
3 words, HGH, human growth hormone. I want WADA to check you out, bro. There's something fishy going on. At the age of 17, you put on a foot. 1 foot in height.
I did actually. I just went from like 5'1" or 5'2" to about 6 in over 6 months actually.
One question.
So it really changed my life.
Sameer, sorry, but did everything grow in proportion?
It did. Actually, you would be pleased to know that.
I'm not pleased to know that. What the hell kind of point is that? Yeah.
Since you're asking.
Okay, all right. Let's leave it there.
So I spent the longest time in really, because I was both short and studious. I naturally gravitated towards science. I really was quite keen and I wanted to study. I wanted to be a scientist. I wanted to go to NASA, all of those kind of things. Then I suddenly shoot up and grow up like this. So I promptly lose interest in science. I get myself.
What a correlation you come up with.
Myself a girlfriend. Various things happen. And of course, at that time in the early 80s, if I was not going to pursue my science career, then the other exciting and attractive thing at the time was advertising. My brother-in-law was in advertising. He used to work in Lintas at that time. And, all around me, advertising was the cool thing. TV was only Doordarshan. Movies was a little far cry, though me and my mom have seen every possible Hindi movie that released, every English movie that released. But I was sort of drawn to advertising. I thought I'd try and get into advertising. I couldn't get in so easily because, I had to first finish studying. I was in Xavier's doing my
Well,
BSc in
let's just set up
physics.
for a second that advertising in the 80s was the happening place, right? It was the place where all the happening people met, the colorful parties, the hot, glamorous people, and plus the creative touch to the whole thing that you're making the most, out there sort of creative, voices, etc. And in touch with those people as well. So let's just put that out there.
Right.
So it was a place you wanted to be in, not just from financial point of view.
I really wanted to be in that place, but I left Xavier's after doing 2 years of BSc because I was too caught up in becoming a great.
What is this BSc? Let's talk about BSc for a second, Sameer. I've never understood what a person does with just a BSc. You make a big deal about getting into science, and what job awaits you at the lab assistant? What do you do after that if you don't do anything further?
Nothing. Which is the concern. So actually my plan was that after the 12th I would go to IIT, but I couldn't do that. So then this became a sort of a default position to do, but I tired of it very quickly. So then I left that, and of course my parents were quite freaked out about this, that you can't end up being uneducated in that sense. So as a sort of a compromise situation, I went to Chennai and I did hotel management. So I did hotel management. I did a BA in economics along the way. But after completing that, I was in Chennai for 3 years then after that. And then I came back to Bombay, but I still couldn't get into advertising because, now it turned out that I was wrongly qualified for advertising. So advertising wouldn't have me. I spent some time, I turned entrepreneur. I, set up a food catering service in Bombay.
Wow, so you were a startup
87.
before startups.
Yeah. I was a startup and I had grand plans. Of course, I had no money. And
what kind of food?
Really
do you remember? What food were you?
I used to make chicken rolls and hot dogs and supply them to a place in town called Grub Corner, right next to Hong Kong Bank, on the Bombay Heights Road.
Yeah.
Fountain. Yeah. So I used to come from Andheri and give it to them. And I ran it for about 3 or 4 months quite successfully. It was like a little bit of a mad experiment of my own.
Yeah, and you make money and put it right into the bank next door. Yeah.
Well, actually, it used to be just turnover. It was not really making money, but I got to a pretty good scenario. I think in 87, I had got up to selling about 200 rolls a day.
Wow.
So it was all in all not a bad scenario. It was just fun, crazy. I was just doing it on my own, all alone, working and getting it done. So my mom came and told me that, listen, this is hardly a plan. So why don't you do something more fruitful in life? So I went and joined the Yellow Pages as a sales executive. I thought it would be the best way to get into advertising because at least it's getting close to media in that sense.
It's easier for you to get an MBA than get into advertising, it looks like, in the 80s. Yeah.
Yeah, it was really hard. Yeah. I mean, no, hard meaning, maybe, I don't know.
I guess Bombay was locked down in that sense. You needed to call the right person to, get an introduction to somebody to enter the.
Funnily enough, I did know the right people. I mean, my brother-in-law was in Lintas.
Why couldn't you get an interview in Lintas or one of the other agencies?
I don't know. I mean, I did a few interviews and it always ended up with, I don't know.
If you were short, you would have got the job. You were too tall.
I would have. Yeah, that's true. I think I screwed it up with the height.
Yeah.
Then after that, I got into Yellow Pages, which was good because then it was, I got into space selling in that sense. It was a startup. So my second startup again. And that company I worked in for 2 years. I did a lot of work there. So the big boss of that company was Anil Kapoor, who became the boss of Ulka, right?
Yeah.
So, so I got a chance to work with him and the other gang who all joined Ulka later. And I spent 2 years there. I worked in Bombay, doing door-to-door sales in Bombay, and all Masjid Bandar and Wadala and Siuri and all of that. And then I also got Gujarat as a territory. So I went, traveling to Anand, then Rajkot and all of that. It was good fun. I quite enjoyed that. I learned everything there. I learned how to sell, which is the most important thing. I learned to, really get out there and, meet monthly targets and weekly targets and make plans and all of that. And after 2 years, actually, I had my college sweetheart back in Chennai. So there was this pressure of having to get married and, getting on with life in that sense. So I applied for a job in Chennai and got it. So I joined advertising for the first time in Chennai in Goldbar.
So you switched, but you were still in advertising. You just switched cities.
Yeah. No, then I switched cities and I managed to land my advertising job finally. I joined Goldbar, which was a breakoff from Lintas, which was set up by Aubrey Sequeira, if you remember it.
Mm-hmm.
So Aubrey Sequeira had set up Lintas and Goldwire, and I went back to Chennai. I got married. I joined Goldwire, and I actually went there to do client servicing. I thought I would wear a tie and go and get started in the business that way. But what happened there is that I got really fortunate. So I think that was my first super lucky break, is because shortly after I joined, the entire film and creative team quit Goldwire. And I somehow, in a weird way, inherited the film and TV department. So I knew nothing about it. I had no clue what I'm supposed to do in that. But I got into that film and TV department, and Goldwire was a very active company. So they used to do a lot of work for MRF. And so
The tire with muscle.
got started. The tire with muscle, exactly. And so I did a lot of work there. We used to buy programming and put it on Doordarshan at the time. And so we used to edit it and put it onto DD. So I've done Street Hawk, Knight Rider, Glow Friends, My Little Pony, the Grammy Awards,
Wow.
Filmfare Awards.
But just
all kinds of
understand
things.
for a second, you went from a sales background, you went to do client servicing, you landed up running the film department.
Yeah. So that was good fortune for me.
all by accident.
And all by accident. And of course, I took to it. So it turned out that, this whole film and TV business, I was made for it. And so I didn't respond poorly to it at all. I really took to it and I got onto it really quickly. And I learned everything I learned about this business, I learned from Aubrey Sequeira, working with him. And I spent, I think, almost 4 years there. So I started making ad films, started making corporate videos, documentaries, all of that stuff. And we used to do a lot of work for MRF, for Fun School, for other clients in Chennai. And, I did that for about 4 years. Then again, this entrepreneurial bug came my way. So I decided to turn independent and become an independent ad filmmaker, as to what everyone does, after a few years in an agency.
You rob the clients and you run off. That's the Indian way.
Well, yeah,
name the clients you robbed.
But unfortunately, I couldn't rob the clients.
Did you break Aubrey's heart, or was it a happy?
No, I didn't. It was okay, actually. We remained friends always. And but I couldn't really succeed as an entrepreneur there, being an independent ad filmmaker. But along that time, I got a call from my old childhood friend from Bandra, who was in Hong Kong at the time, and she called up and said that, hey, listen, this Star TV is going to come to India, and why don't you apply and come and join Star TV? So I said okay, and I sent an application to join. At the time, my hope was, because I'd done so much of sport work at Goldwire with MRF, I thought I wanted to go to Hong Kong and join Star Sports as a promo producer. I thought that would be a sort of a good sort of thing for me to do. And then my second option was that I could join Star Plus as a sort of a programming executive or whatever. What I got was a job in Star Movies, to create interstitial programming for Star Movies when it launches in India.
So Star Movies was the English platform, the Hollywood film.
English movie channel. Yeah, Hollywood films. And it was launching. It was the first pay channel to launch in India. So in any case, I met Tony Watts in Bombay, and he said that this is the plan. I said, what exactly is interstitial programming? So he said, oh, well, it's behind the scenes, on locations, and interviews with Bollywood stars and Indian movie stars and producers, creators, which we make into 15-minute capsules and play in between movies and Star Movies. And the first thought that came to my head was, oh my God, that's like Bajaj ki le rahe hain. But I said, yeah, okay, cool. I said, in English language? He said, yes, English language. So I said, okay, I can do this. And so I took the job and I came back to Bombay. And then we got started with Star Movies, and I had quite the time there. And that's how I joined Star.
So, so basically, you worked only in Star Movies. I always had the feeling that you were working more in the mother Star channel, Star Plus.
No, actually, when I joined Star Movies. Star Plus was an English language channel which used to do 2 or 3 shows, I think.
That was also an English channel, Star Plus. God, I'm so confused.
Star Plus, when it first started, was an English channel. It was Santa Barbara and Bold and
Beautiful. Oh, right. God, you're aging us. Sameer, be careful what you say. And now you're not only aging us, you're dumbing us down, because now they know we watch Santa Barbara. Bold and the Beautiful. How can I forget? My God. May I say, amongst the worst shows anyone can see.
Yeah,
Baywatch with the volume off was still bearable, but Santa Barbara, with this long. Simi Garewal revived that with her show Rendezvous, where you just look into camera for a long time and nothing happens, kind of thing. So the platform was Star Movies initially. So your initial life has been very colorful, but completely like you're not sticking to one thing. Sort of, you've gone from this to that, this to that, this to that. This is also different from advertising where you were, and far away from chicken roll salesman, far away from the very first thing you did. And it's almost like again you're learning on the job, because this is the first time they've come to the country. Nobody really has data. You're right. You're like a pioneer, but you're also experimenting all the time. So did you feel the pressure suddenly that you've got to sort of build this? There's no precedent before you.
I think the good thing about being, the Wild West and being pioneering is that even though you don't know, I mean, there's no precedent before you and you don't know what's to be done, nobody else does either, right? So, I mean, at least you're in relatively safe company because there's no expert here and everyone's talking through their hat. And, mostly everyone is, gassing and goofing off. And within that context, I mean, you can build it forward and take it. And that's what we did. So, I mean, the first 2 years in Star Movies was really creating, a lot of, great interstitial programming. I got a chance to meet Bollywood at close quarters at that time. I've interviewed Shah Rukh Khan 3 or 4 times in that period. Mr. Bachchan many times. All the movies that were releasing in that period, we've done either, behind the scenes or on location interviews or, personal one-on-one interviews, all kinds of things, and created a lot of programming. We did premieres of movies. I did the launch of Bobby Deol and Twinkle Khanna's Barsat.
Barsat, yeah.
We had a grand premiere at Metro. It was actually just a contest, but we made a big sort of content thing around it. We did Mrityu Data, Mr. Bachchan's great comeback movie, all sorts of things. And if you were very closely with the gang at Channel V at the time, because Channel V had broken off had been created out of MTV.
Right.
And of course, Star Plus was doing its stuff, which was also the very infamous Nikki Tonight.
Yes. Right.
And those kind of things were going on.
Infamous is one episode where they made that Gandhi remark and then, unfortunately, or whatever. But going back a little bit, so were you not intimidated, but were you happy to be with these Bollywood guys? I mean, from where to where? Keep in mind, chicken roll salesman, suddenly Amitabh Bachchan is sitting across you and all that. How was that for you?
Yeah, but it's okay. I mean, at the end of the day, my approach to most of this has been that, I'm not a fan.
Really?
But I'm not a critic either. I'm,
growing
I'm
up, you
curious,
said your
right?
mom and you would watch all the movies and all. Surely it was like, from where to where sort of situation.
Yeah, but I don't know whether it was for me a, Gokwathi moment kind of thing. I'm happy to meet and see and get to know people better and all of that. But it wasn't exactly being bedazzled. I am not easily bedazzled, so it takes something to do. But I had good fun because, it was really interesting. All the interviews we did and all the people we spoke to, it was a great learning into how different artists and different talent look at their own medium, look at what they're doing with their regard to their craft. So, one of my favorite questions used to be, what does acting mean to you? Kind of thing. And the amazing, sort of answers we've received from different people as to how they approach their craft is quite interesting.
Without telling their names, could you tell us a couple of the answers? Then maybe I can guess.
No, I can tell you what Mr. Bachchan said was that, the way he chose to describe it, he said that what is acting, what does acting mean? So he had a very interesting description. He said that, the first time, you hear the story, you hear it as a story. Then later you get to read it as a screenplay. Then, it moves along from there and you've got dialogues and you're doing readings and stuff. Then you do rehearsals. Finally, you land up on the set. You do a couple of rehearsal takes, and then finally it's time for action, right? For that moment. And at that time, you have now, over the last 6 or 8 months, you know exactly what the scene is, right? You know that the person is going to come and inform the hero that his mother is dead, and now the hero has to respond and say, "Kya, maa mar gayi," kind of thing. He said at that time, when you make that performance, you have to do it as if you're hearing the information for the first time, right? Because when you hear it for the first time, the audience will hear it for the first time. And that is acting. So I thought, wow, that sounds cool. That's a good way of doing it. That everything about this. Even in a horror movie, when the actor goes and opens the cupboard and a dead body falls out, it's there. You've done numerous rehearsals. All of that is there. But the fright and the spook at that moment and the surprise is what makes great actors and, not so great.
So maybe they should rename it acting again and again, because you acted so many times before you actually.
You have to, yeah. In fact, even when you do theatre, you guys do so much theatre, you've actually done the performance so many times, right?
I think over rehearsal is the worst thing.
At that moment, And at that moment, when you're performing and the audience sitting in the stage is always enthralled by the, the sheer
Your
immediacy of it all.
800th performance of that line. Yeah, okay. Fair enough. So, what about the others? Give us a couple more examples. Huh? So, what are the answers? Shah Rukh, do you remember?
Well, there were, I can't tell you the name, but there was one sort of another actor, senior actor, who had, by the time I got to meet him, had, become a villain. And so, we were doing the standard, like what is acting and how do you get into the skin of the character? And, and he was really grumpy and he got really pissed. And he said, what do you mean skin of the character? You call this acting? I am the heroine's father and I am a bad guy. And now after this scene, this fellow is going to come and hit me. What is acting in this? So I said, oh, okay. So you're not getting into the skin of the character. But yeah.
So he was unhappy with his situation, obviously.
Well, it's formulaic Bollywood cinema. Yeah. So, he was obviously unhappy with his position.
Yeah.
But all kinds, and different people have different views. But it was really interesting to meet people, even the directors, cinematographers, all kinds of people. It was a good time for me, actually. And in fact, a lot of people whom I interact with today, we go back to the early 90s.
But so what at this point, let's stop there for a second and pause there for a second. When you're at the Star movies experimental phase, sort of situation, how would you describe yourself? Because, you've already worn these 5-6 hats. There's definitely a creative side to it. There's a very strong production side. There's probably a marketing side to it. So how do you describe Sameer Nair as a person working in television at that point?
I think at that time, I suppose the extent of my, what I was thinking would be that, making progress in Star. Obviously, I wanted to get to Star Plus because that was, that's the big programming thing to do. At the end of the day, interstitial programming for Star movies is a real side act. The idea was to get into mainline programming of really big content, the kind of content that we consume and watch, and to make movies eventually. So that was my sort of mindset at the time.
So by now you had decided you will make films.
Yeah, of course. I wanted to make films back in Chennai. The whole thing about getting into advertising was eventually to someday make a film. But that everyone has. So I don't know whether that's so unique. If you're in the business, you say I should make a movie. But that was where I was thinking, and the plan was to work around, keep making. And also, again, what happens with life is that you see it in retrospect, and you say, oh, these were the big moments. At that time, it's going day by day, week by week, month by month. All the points, all the wins, all the losses. Things are happening. So the big thing that happened was that suddenly there was a big turmoil in Star, and Ratikant Basu arrived.
Correct, yeah.
So when Ratikant Basu arrived into Star, then Star suddenly went from Angrezon ke zamane ke manager hai hum to now suddenly we are hardcore Indian bureaucrats have come in. And he brought his entire team from Doordarshan and came. And then Star went through a cultural and psychological.
Was it forward or backward?
Change. Well, see, honestly, for my scheme of things, in the beginning, I didn't know what is going on here. These guys have arrived and I'm trying to make contact and they don't want to meet me. I'm also in a funny space because I am technically the head of Star movies in India. But in the face of all these big senior people who've arrived now, I'm like some EP. I'm like a flunky here, so suddenly my equation with Hong Kong is under a little bit of pressure because now we've got a new Indian management. But in about 3 or 4 months, I managed to, sort of get closer to Mr. Basu and sort of at least, get him to acknowledge my existence. And then I did a lot more work after that. So then after that, I continued. Of course, I continued to work with Star movies. But shortly after that, I also became the head of promos for Star Network in it. So that was a big
Star Network means the whole thing, everything.
Whole thing was then at that time it meant Star Movies and Star Plus. So that was one big sort of move forward. And then from there, I started doing network presentation. And by the time Mr. Basu and gang were leaving 2.5 years later, I had sort of also done Hindi movie acquisitions. And I had also continued my Star movies work.
So
it turned out to be a good period for me, but it was quite traumatic, I must say, to start with, that.
But look at the irony actually that's happening here. So what happened is these guys come in, you're not sure with this corporate structure who's who. You don't know whether you're still there or not there, whether you're top dog or bottom dog, all that. But at the end of the day, you stay and they all disappear at some point. So in a sense...
In fact, the way they disappeared also was funny because, 2.5 years on, I was like, I still hadn't got to my sort of, dream that, run Star Plus. And it was all over the place in that sense. So I had actually decided that, okay, now I've had it with this. I've spent a lot of time working. So now let me pursue this movie dream. And so I had set up to go and meet Mr. Bachchan and pitch an idea to him on a Friday. So it was, I still remember that because it was quite a momentous day in my life. So it was a Friday morning. We had a meeting with him at 11 o'clock. And Sunil Doshi, who was my friend and who does a lot of work with me. You know Sunil.
Yeah.
So Sunil had set up the meeting and he calls me at 10:45 and says, "Hi, where are you?" So I said, "Where am I? I'm in office." He said, "What are you doing? We have the meeting with Mr. Bachchan at 11. I said, "Oh shit, Sunil, I'm so sorry. Guess what happened? Everyone got fired yesterday. I got promoted. I'm the new head of programming of Star Plus. I'm not coming." So that's what happened. It was all of a sudden. Peter became CEO. I became head of programming. And then I suddenly inherited Star Plus into my life and had to go from there. So it's almost
like you're a godfather figure in Hong Kong. Somebody made a phone call. Next thing you know, you're the boss. Everything changed overnight.
Well, I'm not the boss. Actually, it was more traumatic because then my hope was that I become the head of programming of Star Plus while these guys are around.
Okay.
Not when they are gone.
So the responsibility is shared. Yeah, fair enough.
No, and it's also like I'm on super thin ice, right? Because now I got to become even closer to, got to make friends and build out a whole new relationship with Peter Mukherjee.
Right.
Who we knew, of course, because he was there since 93 when the time I was there. So we were friends, but even then, we've never had a real sort of a reporting relationship up until then.
Right. I'll tell you what, I want to talk about Peter Mukherjee, obviously not because of any gossip, etc. That would not be the reason. But we'll do that a little later after we take a break. Before we take the break, I want to just fast forward a little bit to where you are now, because then the growth became very exponential in a sense. You started becoming, everybody knew Sameer Nair was. You started becoming the guy who makes decisions, sort of launches careers, destroys programs, makes programs, that kind of thing. So just take us through what happens next now, as you, in a sense, help change television.
So then, after that, became head of programming of Star. The following year, we do KBC and Kyonki. So that all happens. Star becomes a big success. Then all the other things that happened in Star. Then around 2007, we leave Star. I start Imagine. Peter starts 9X. All of those things happen. Imagine goes on 4 years. Then leave Imagine. I became entrepreneur again. Spend a couple of years doing this, that, and the other. Then go to Balaji. Set up Alt Balaji with Ekta. And then 3 years later, I start Applause.
Wow.
And now it's 5 years from there. So
and it's time for us to play some applause. As he started applause, Rishi, my sound man, is looking for a job. In fact, he's stuck in a podcast. So this is the right guy to talk to, all right? And he doesn't give you a job at applause. He can give you a job from anywhere along the way. He's left his imprint there. So what we do is we'll take a quick break and then we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit more about what's happening right now in your life, also the AMAs, and a couple of things about Peter Mukherjee and his estranged wife, whose name I forget. After this quick break, Sameer Nair. All right, back here after the break, we're joined by Silvery, and actually offline we were discussing, Sameer, you were telling me a Mike Tyson story, because I just asked you actually how long you've been in the business, and we figured it's 33 odd years in television, where you've seen the entire shape of television sort of change with you. So you and television are personified in a sense. So what is the Mike Tyson story that you're going to tell us?
So when I was in Goldwire, we used to acquire rights to international sport events and telecast them on Doordarshan. So there was this one Mike Tyson fight, which of course was a very famous fight, but at the time when we were doing it, the rights had been acquired and they were going to be telecast on Doordarshan. And MRF is a sponsor, ties with Muscle, all of that, and we got the slot and everything. And then the fight happened. This is late in the night. And the live fight happens, and that's the
Buster
one where
Douglas.
Tyson. No, not Buster Douglas. It was someone else. But Tyson finished the fight in 8 seconds. He almost uprooted the guy's head.
The shortest one would be Joe Fraser's son. Yeah, Marvin Fraser.
I don't know, but it was really odd because we had a half-hour slot and we had the top and tail and all the noise and this and that. And the fight starts, and then he sort of gives him a uppercut and almost takes his head off. And then all we did for the next 5-10 minutes was going on playing the replays of that because we had no other play. The match is over, and then the sort of thing was done in 10 minutes. And my sort of initiation to television and live television and all came from such kind of weird things,
So now you know what we...
Also the Grammy Awards, we edited the Grammy Awards. This was the one where Milli Vanilli did the performance and then
fake
later proven to be frauds. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
So
now you know what we anchors and VJs have to go through now. when they say now just kill time. It's the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the artist is not calm or whatever. They can't go on with the program for whatever reason. Wow, fantastic.
Sameer, you also worked with Alt Balaji and Star. What was Alt Balaji like? What's it like working with Ekta Kapoor and seeing all that become the empire that it is?
We want the truth and only the truth.
Yeah, so actually, there are two parts to working with Ekta Kapoor. I first met her in '99 when I was in Star and I'd become the head of programming, and they had come and pitched a show to us, which we did. That's the famous Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi.
Wow.
And then that went on to doing a whole range of shows with Balaji and Ekta.
Not
at
to
the
mention,
time.
one of the actresses became a cabinet minister. I
Yes.
won't name names.
Wow,
Yeah.
great,
Yes.
great.
Huh.
Amazing.
And so
Yes.
that was the first stint of working with Ekta, and we did a lot of work, I think, across through Star, even at Imagine. So I've been sort of known her as a friend and as a industry colleague all this period. Then I joined Balaji in 2014. This time it was really to, Ekta always wanted to set up our own channel, and the plan was that rather than setting up now a broadcast channel, because TV is sort of, time has passed and streaming was around the corner. So we decided to create a streaming channel called Alt Balaji. So my time in Balaji was primarily spent in getting that plan in place, getting all of those parts in order, raising money for it, and then launching it, which is what we did. So, I mean, I know Ekta very well. So, I mean, it'd be difficult for me to, how's it working with her? I've known her from when she was a kid and I was a kid. So, and she is an extremely, or what shall we say,
Silvery.
Yes.
obsessed.
Sameer has been on TV, or rather in the television world, for 33 years,
Yeah, wow.
which is more than your age.
It is more than
So
one.
you're minus something to his career at the moment. Mathematically, it's difficult for us to understand.
true.
Let's get to the elephant in the room in a sense. The Peter Mukherjee years and his infamous wife. How close was that relationship? I've seen you at events and parties together. So there was a decently close relationship.
Oh, very close. Actually, Peter, in '99, as I was telling you, when Mr. Basu and team left, Peter became CEO, I became head of programming. So from that point on, we'd already known each other from '94, but from that point on, it was a reporting relationship because I used to report to him, apart from the gang in Hong Kong. And I think we got along really well. He's been a terrific boss, a terrific, support system in my life, great colleague, and he's a really funny guy, so he's really witty and, extremely, sort of comical and jovial and quite the prankster. And we got on really well. And actually, also what happened is that after that, when he became CEO, I became head of programming, we also ended up succeeding very quickly. So like this happened in Feb '99, and by July 2000, KBC Kyunki happened, Star became number one, and we were kings of the hill and blah, blah. So it was it was a terrific working relationship. Star grew through leaps and bounds. We did all kinds of things, and Peter and me have traveled all over the place on numerous jaunts because he was CEO, I then became COO. So we spent a lot of time in, the sort of, essentially we were partners in crime doing all these things.
Okay, don't use that phrase, Peter. But this is wrong. Sorry, that phrase is out of place. Really. Please, can you dial that back a bit? That's scary.
If I can ask, like in those early days, how did you decide what projects to green light and what projects to work on? What attracted your attention then?
So the two big things that we did and really changed our fortunes and really worked out for us, because just before that, when I first became head of programming, we did like a whole range of shows, and no matter, it was like 25 shows were launched. We did some really good things. We did star bestsellers, which has resulted in the rise of most of the young directors of today. Not so young anymore now.
Yeah.
We did shows like Man, we did Rajdhani, all sorts of things. But nothing really fired, because there was Z and Sony, and they were really strongly entrenched. And Star Plus, despite its best efforts, we couldn't really break through. Then in late '99, the joint venture with Z split. So we used to be in a joint venture with Z, which required us to be half Hindi, half English. That's why we used to have Star News at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, correct.
So after the joint venture split, Pranoy used to do the 9 p.m. news.
Correct. The
So
first
after
thing.
the joint venture came to an end, this plan came up that, okay, so what are we going to do? We want to go full Hindi. So the first thing I said was that, okay, let's do Who Wants to Be a Millionaire, because I'd seen the show before and we wanted to do it. So that became plan one. And then around April, Ekta and Jeetuji came and met me and said that, that we want to do this show. And I heard it for the first time, this one, Kyunki Saas Bhi Kabhi Bahu Thi. So I greenlit it and said, okay, chalo, let's do this as a daily soap in prime time, which is 10:30 at the time. And so KBC would come at 9 o'clock.
Yes.
Kyunki would come at 10:30, and that was our first start. Let's start with KBC and see where we go.
So
But,
did you think
you know,
KBC was going to become the phenomenon that it became? Because when it started, it used to be like the family watching time was KBC. You would sit and try to answer the questions before the guest could, and so it became like a cultural phenomenon immediately almost.
It did. So I think when we set out to make it, I mean, we knew it was a big show because it had already been successful in the US and UK. I think I got a lot of, skepticism from everyone in the industry. I mean, for most people, it was, in a history of dumb ideas, this has got to be the dumbest, taking a fading superstar, doing a quiz show in prime time, that too Monday to Friday. And, how stupid is that? But it turned out really well. So, I mean, we knew we were trying to make a successful show, but the extent of its success obviously took everyone by surprise.
Also, his personality, he was superb. He made Hindi cool again. He had non-Hindi speaking people interested in the show. I mean, let's give him some credit.
And Mr. Bachchan is outstanding because, at the end of the day, I often get credited for bringing him to the small screen. But the fact of the matter is that, for all actors, it is their decision to make, right? And he did make that decision. Everyone advised him against it.
Did he hesitate?
Family, all friends. No, and everyone was like, he used to be very, what am I doing? Should I be doing this? Is it a good idea? Is it not? But then finally, when we took him to London, we took him to the studios and we shot the promos there and we showed him the setup. We said, look, this is what we're trying to do. So he told me on the flight back that, listen, if you do this exactly the way you're promising to do it, hard ke rakh denge. So I said, sir, we will do it. We will do it exactly the way. And we, in fact, recreated Elstree Studios in Film City, down to the directional of enter, from which door you enter and turn left or right.
So now, Silvery, the Brits use our Film City studio.
Wow.
Yeah. Cheaper, faster. Amitabh can do both languages also, not a problem. But can he answer all the questions himself? That's a question.
I mean, no.
That's a tough one.
You can't know all the answers.
No, but he's quite good with knowledge. Whatever I've interacted with him, I think his GK is pretty good. So he'd probably he would have done well.
Okay, you would have done well.
He would have done well.
Sure.
What do you think, Sameer? If Amitabh played against Amitabh in KCC, how would he have? He would have got a few points. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I'm sure he would have because he's and obviously over the years doing so many years of KBC is that you also come in contact with so much more knowledge and so much more information, right? But other smart people who've done really well on KBC have been Shahrukh. Shahrukh is really smart. I mean, on his episode of KBC, it was, it's a celebrity episode where money is donated to charity. He actually got to winning the crore. So, I mean, it was
without any cheating.
Obviously not cheating.
Without any setting.
No setting at all. In fact, they used to do that all the time.
Do any actors ask for the questions beforehand and all?
Well, when they do, the position is that you don't get to, we obviously can't give any questions or answers, but we try because it's a celebrity episode and it's made for charity. So it's not designed to make you lose on the first thing, get out of here. So you still got to go. So what we try and do is just try and find out what your likes and dislikes, what are your interest areas, and then try and build questions around that. But you still got to answer it. And it's not easy because the minute you get past 10, 12 lakh mark, then, you got to earn the charity you want to give. So, but we found that most people are way more knowledgeable than what we think they are.
Yeah, also our charities have always been our own family. So if we ever get a chance, we'll remember to crack it immediately for the right charity. Charity begins at home. Yaad rakho beta, begins at home. Okay, one quick question before we go to the AMAs. I know he doesn't have too much time. Sameer, and this is a naive question, but so what's the difference for you in television and OTT then? I mean, is there a difference now that that's your world?
Well, I think it's a difference of technology. For India, what happened is that because when we did the Saas Bahu shows in 2000, it really, KBC was a hit, but I think the bigger hits were the Saas Bahu shows because they continued to date and they really have become the killer programming app for television across languages, across everything. And that, in a way, prevented us from having our HBO moment, of creating high quality premium drama series. We never made Sopranos, we never did The Wire, we never did all those things. India still TV is run by Saas Bahu shows, or reality shows. That's what TV is run by. So I think what OTT has done when the streamers arrived is that it created that opportunity to create this high quality drama series of 10 episodes into multiple seasons, much like how the Americans have been doing from the late 90s. So that's an exciting thing because I've consumed so much of that television, but never got a chance to make it, even though I ran television in India for so many years. Because we were not too focused on, just succeeding at what we do.
Sameer, what is your favorite thing? What would you say is your favorite thing on television right now? Like, are you watching something that you would say?
On TV, I'm not watching really. I mean, on TV, I'm not watching. I watch a lot of streaming, but as a family, we do consume a lot of MasterChef.
Great.
So that's the one TV show that is still being watched a lot.
Also, KBC is still running and in hundreds of languages.
Yeah,
KBC is running in all multiple languages and all of that. A lot of sport gets consumed. I stopped watching news in the last 2-3 years. That used to be something that I was interested in, but I have not watched any news broadcast in 2 years. But sport, I think sport is the one big driver that remains, what gets me back to TV. I watch IPL only on TV, not on streaming.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's...
Uday Shankar
And there's a channel called Tata Sky Hits. There's a channel called Tata Sky Hits, where Tata Sky has got a sort of collection of the golden oldies. All those crazy one, Are You Being Served? And, Cheers and all those shows. So that's something that we watch.
Cheers.
So,
do you remember
I've seen
80s,
Cheers.
90s
I've seen
American
I've
sitcom?
seen Frasier.
Yeah. Are You Being Served is BBC.
Yeah.
Frasier's a spin-off. Yeah, not bad, not bad.
Yeah.
The kid's good, man. It's not
Yeah,
bad.
he knows his stuff. Yeah.
For a substance abuser, I'm very impressed. Very impressed. Yeah.
Follow me at Instagram and Twitter on Bored Brocha. I'm so bored, I need your help. I need your love. I need your touch. Okay, just follow me.
Should we go into the AMAs?
Yeah, let's go to the AMAs. Okay, so Sameer, this is a bit of freewheeling questions. We don't know where they're coming from.
Yeah.
So be on guard.
First one comes in from Nishi Thakur, who says, Hi Cyrus and dear guest. Do you sometimes feel like you did something too late in life? As in, what was your yaar ye to pehle hi kar lena chahiye tha moment? That's what she says.
I think Sameer, you should take this. You ever feel that you waited too long to do something, but there's a lot of destiny involved in your life, it looks like. Like you do one thing and something else happens.
Like many times when I look back, I think that, okay, you could have done things like for example, applause, right? So the plan in 99 was to go and meet Mr. Bachchan, get him to agree to my plan to make this movie, and then use that as a kickoff to set up a company like Applause, which would be a film studio and work with like-minded directors and producers and create this entity. But none of that happened. So it took a full, 18 years before I got a chance to do that. So, but could I have done it before? Maybe. Maybe if that had not happened, maybe it would have worked out, maybe it wouldn't have. But, I really don't look back to think whether things would have been different, because, may have gone terribly wrong as well. So.
But can I tell you my observation on this? And I feel very bad about this. I feel there's too much television and OTT programming anyway. And of course, you've contributed when the history of the world is written. There's no doubt your name will lead all the rest and all that. Fair enough. But I feel we lost out on some great chicken rolls. And I feel there are not enough chicken rolls out there. So I feel that chicken roll, if it was given a little more, power, you weren't there for the first half, he started making chicken rolls. He would leave Andheri. Interesting story, because he physically made the chicken roll, go to Hong Kong Bank area in Fountain and sell it to us in a store area there, or a small restaurant there, physically. And he actually didn't have inventory in the end, because he was doing so well, about 200 odd per day, but didn't have enough inventory because he couldn't cope being a single guy doing that. And I'm wondering, what if that franchised out, I mean, screw KBC and everything else. What if that, Nair's rolls, all over the world there's Nair's rolls. It's huge. We're talking about Dubai, Chicago, Arkansas, London, Paris, Tokyo, everywhere. It would have been huge. I think we missed on something on that chicken roll.
See?
Well, it's never too late.
The great what ifs.
It's never too late.
The great what ifs.
I mean, with all due respect, Saas bhi kabhi bahut hi. I mean, really. How many great Hollywood moments? Sameer bloody Nair himself can't bear to watch it after 5 minutes. What the hell is he saying?
All right. Next one comes in from Mahima Prakash. Mahima Prakash has asked, "Hello Sameer sir. Glad to get to hear you in conversation with Cyrus. You've been a part of the Indian media industry for decades now. If you had to sum up your experience in one or two great lessons, what would those be?" Yeah, that is a tough one.
One or two great lessons.
Yes. Put you on the spot.
No, it's okay. I mean, my favorite sort of example for this is that, our business is such that from the time you hear an idea for the first time to when you finally see it on screen, that's a journey, right? Because from the idea to screen, now if you take OTT or movies or anything, it's like an 18-month journey. It takes 18 months before it finally shows up on screen. So the one thing I've learned is that, ideas are good, but it's never the story, it's the storytelling. And in the process of the storytelling, you got to do it with people you like, people whom you get along with, because it's a collaborative effort and it's going to be a long journey. So if you like these people and if they're all like-minded and if you can get that wavelength going, the chances of you ending up with success are higher than if it's going to be an unhappy journey. So because our entire business is a journey, it's never the destination, and the outcome really then ends up with the audience. So there's not much you can do about that. But if you can have fun in the process, I think you'll have fun in career and in your life.
And I guess you can't say it's an exact science, right? Whatever people say, because then everybody will have successful programming. If you could write something, after all these years, with all your knowledge and the fact that people will punt on you, hence you'll be hired by the biggest studios, end of the day, you can't 100% guarantee that X will work for Y market.
Yeah. No, and you will fail. And in fact, the best part about our business is that, the amount of error that occurs, because, because no one sets out to make a flop. Everyone is setting out to make a hit, but flops do happen, and they happen because of...
Maybe that's a great idea. Why do we set out to make a flop? I know it's been done before. Sameer, we've got the idea here. Don't tell anyone. Just cancel the stream as fast as possible. Yeah, oof. This is superb. Chicken rolls. We can go back to chicken rolls.
The dreams.
Thank God we flopped. Nair's rolls coming soon. Sounds a little vulgar also. Check out Nair's rolls.
Sounds like fat.
Fat is good, bro. Fat is good.
So what is next for you now, sir? So what are you working on next? What is the plan?
There are a whole range of shows happening.
There's like 50 things on this.
I'm sure.
There is City of Dreams Season 3, Criminal Justice Season 3 is going to launch. But the two big ones that are sort of currently in our horizon is the big series we are doing on Gandhi, which is based on Ramchandra Guha's books. We've cast Pratik Gandhi to play Gandhi. We've got Hansal Mehta to direct.
Gandhi is Gandhi.
So that's going to be a really
Mehta is Mehta. It's all good. Patel bhi aave.
So that's a big one, because it's going to be, as a story, a biopic on Gandhi. It's a story of the Indian independence struggle, and it's also like the birth of a nation. So it's a really big one for us. The other one is the Amar Chitra Katha. We acquired the rights to the entire catalog, and I want to animate the whole comic series. And the thought with that is to really take the epics, which is Mahabharata and Ramayana, and make it at an international standard for an international audience. So it's not really about making Mahabharata.
So BJP goes abroad.
Yeah, of course. Why not?
India conquers. Now Japanese follow us. Excellent.
So I think we consume Greek mythology, we consume Nordic mythology.
I agree.
So why not reverse?
Absolutely.
In fact, I can see it being in the flavor. If you look at Avengers and that kind of range of genre or whatever, epics go into that genre: fighting, color,
Bahubali was that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So I can see it being successful across cultures.
Yeah.
Stories old as the hills, good versus bad.
Absolutely.
Right. So those are two big things we're working on. Then there are a whole bunch of movies.
But you haven't cast. It's an animation, but you need voices. Silvery, what do you want to play?
The monkey.
Sure, if you part with a little money, which goes back to the coffers of the producer, we'll figure out something.
Sure.
Yes, of course, we should do that.
To invest.
Okay, that's it. All right, Sameer, we won't waste any more of your time because you're busy trying to make money and make the world a better place for people to watch on different platforms, not just OTT. Any parting words from Sameer Nair for any young aspirant? Because again, this comedy of errors, it is actually that. It's not like we're being flippant about it, but it is actually that you started somewhere, you ended somewhere else completely, and it's almost like it wasn't your idea. It just sort of happens.
Yeah, and in fact, that's what it is. That they say that life is what happens to you when you're busy making other plans, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, it's always the case, and for all of us, it's true. So you always set out to do something, and sometimes it takes you on that path. And I reason that if you set out to do something and you actually get there, it's probably a boring outcome, right?
Yeah.
Like people who set out to be doctors and become doctors and then end up being doctors, and that's pretty much it. It's like there's a lot of life has been missed.
That's what
I'm
frustrated guys should understand that.
for the adventure.
No, you're right, because when girls reject you, that's the romance. That's why, Rishi, I'm telling you, keep your head up. When girls say yes immediately, your life has got no meaning here. What do you do? It's over. It's games. It's like you won Wimbledon. Abhi kya karega? Look at Boris Becker today. 3-time winner, and he's in jail. So think about it, Rishi. You need the struggle. The struggle is important. You need the no's. The no's are important. But not to make light of the fact that Sameer Nair had all kinds of strange beginnings and then suddenly landed at the apex position in television and now entertainment. Sameer, thank you very much. I hope we've chumchad you enough. So I don't have to use the couch next time I come over to applause. See you soon.
Thank you.
See you soon.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, catch us on any of the podcasting apps, please. We beg you, we need you. Send us your questions on Twitter on Cyrus Says In, or you can email us, even if you're not female, on whatcyrussays@gmail.com.